we're in the grid, and the reason we're stopping here is there are a few hidden gems here in the grid and a lot of great at-a-glance details that you can see about your files that I think a lot of customers miss. And the data that you're seeing here in the grid is really dependent on the types of items that you're viewing in the grid and the columns you've selected to view in the grid. So we can see that I have 19 files within this folder right now. And if I click on the item type dropdown, we can see that I actually have 14 receipts, 1 contact, 3 documents, and 1 invoice. Now, because I'm viewing multiple different item types in my grid right now, we can see contacts and documents and receipts. I can only see certain columns in my grid, things like name and category, source, and date added. And these columns represent the file fields of your files. And when you're viewing multiple item types at one point in the grid, the only file fields that you're able to see are file fields that all of these different item types share in common. And if I click on the column dropdown, we can see that, I have a limited number of columns that I can view here. Now, if I want to see more columns available to me, then I have to filter my folder down to just one item type. To do that, I'm going to click on my item type dropdown here, and I'm going to select receipts. If I wanted to include other item types in my filter, I could just select the ones that I want to include. But for now, I just want to see receipts. So we're going to choose receipts and filter the grid. And now we can see I have all of these other different columns, things like vendor and amount and payment type and reimbursable status as well. And the other thing too is that, the filter that I applied here to the utilizing the grid folder will also flow through to my other folders. So if I switch over to this managing my lists folder, we can see that the same receipts filter has been applied to this folder as well. So that's convenient if you're kind of browsing through your folder structure and you're specifically looking for a specific item using specific filters. So we're seeing now receipt-specific columns, and when I click on the column dropdown, we can see all of my other receipt-specific file fields that I can now add to my grid since I'm only viewing receipts. If you're looking at files in your grid and you're not seeing the column that you want to add in the column dropdown, then you should check to see how many different files you're viewing within your grid at that point in time, and make sure you filter it down to just one item type. Now, you can reorder your columns. Let's say, for example, I want to move this source column here to the back. I can move it by clicking the column dropdown, clicking the 6 dots to the left of the source column, and dragging it around. I'm going to move it to the back, and we can see now source is here at the back of my grid here. You can also add new columns to your grid. Say, for example, I wanted to add the project column to my grid. I can do that by placing a check mark in the project column here, and we can now see that that's now available in my grid. The other thing too is, the columns that you add in one folder will carry over to other folders as well. So we added project as an available column here, and if I switched over to my managing my lists folder, we can see that project is also now available in this grid as well. So changes that you make to columns will flow through to your other folders. If I wanted to remove a column, I could do that just by removing the checkbox next to the column that I no longer want to see. All right, another thing that you can do with the grid is you can also sort your grid. So I can sort my grid by any one of these columns here except for the image column. And we're going to talk about the image column separately, but I could sort everything in chronological order by date by clicking on the date header here. And if I click it twice, it'll put it in reverse order. I can sort everything in alphabetical order here by vendor by clicking on vendor. And again, in reverse order by clicking on it again. And I can put everything in numerical order by clicking on amount here, and again in reverse order by clicking it again. And you can do that for every single one of your column headers. The sorting is also helpful if you have things like, reimbursable status, where you want to group your files within the grid together. So if I click on reimbursable here, it's going to group all of my reimbursable items together at the top, which might make it easier for me to find a specific file I'm looking for. Another thing that you can do with the grid is you can add multiple filters to your grid to help you filter down and find a file you might be looking for. So we've already added an item type filter, but we can also add other filters here. So let's go ahead and let's add a filter for project. And we're going to choose file management webinar project, because I know I have a few in my grid that meet that. So now I'm only seeing 9 files in this grid that are all receipts and also have the project file management webinar applied to it. I can add another filter. Let's add one for category, and let's add meals and restaurants and save. And now I'm only seeing receipts in my grid that have the project file management webinar applied to it and the category meals and restaurants applied to it. And now I can use filter combined with sorting to, sort and find all of my reimbursable meals and restaurants expenses and quickly find those files. I kind of think sorting and filtering is underrated when it comes to locating a specific file within your database. There is also the keyword search, which we're really not going to talk about today. We're going to talk about in some future webinars. But I just want to call out that filtering and sorting is another way that you can locate files in your database. And, it makes it pretty quick and easy to find something in a large list of data. All right, let's talk about this image preview column. So at a glance, the image preview column doesn't seem like it does much, but it actually is very handy. First off, if you hover over one of these image icons, you get this weird unmatched preview message. And that message is actually associated with a feature that we have in the accounts and transactions section of Neat. So if you have credit card and bank accounts connected to Neat in the accounts and transactions section, and you're streaming transactions from those connected accounts to Neat, you can actually use a feature called matching that will allow you to match transactions in that section of Neat to files within your file cabinet, basically allowing you to reconcile your transactions in the transactions section of Neat. And if my file was matched to a transaction, I would actually have a different icon in the image preview window here, indicating to me that this file has been matched to a file in that section. We're not going to talk about accounts and transactions though today. Another thing that this image column tells me is that any of the files here that has an image icon, I know that that file has an image associated with it. Whereas like this file here that doesn't have an image icon doesn't have an image associated with it. Now I can attach an image to it if I wanted to, but it's letting me know at a glance that this file does not have an image associated with it. And I was able to create that item by clicking on this create item drop down here and creating a new receipt. And this allows you to create items within your database that don't have an image with them that you could, add an image to later. Any items that you create like that will still flow through to your reports and will still allow you to filter them and send them to CPAs, accountants, and your coworkers as well. So they act just like any other item type in Neat. The other thing that the image preview does is when I click on it, I can actually preview the image associated with that file. This makes it really easy for me to just go down the line to try to find a file that I'm looking for. And once I find the file I'm looking for, I can click this button here to download the image directly to a PDF file on my computer hard drive. If I click this button here, it allows me to open the image up in a new window actually, like this. So I can see my image in a new window, which allows me to zoom in on it if I need to, if maybe it's too small to view in the image preview window itself. Going back to Neat. The other thing that I can also do is I can just click open, and then it's just going to open the file for me, and I can go in and I can make changes and add notes to it if I need to, and do anything that I need to do to update my file. So don't underestimate the image column here and how quickly it can help you to find files in Neat. The last thing that I want to talk about in the grid is the right-click menu. So I think that this is something that also gets missed by customers, but you can actually right-click anywhere in the grid and get this action menu. You can do things like send a file to your trash, email a file out to somebody directly from Neat, move your file around within your cabinet, bulk edit and combine and separate files, which we're going to talk about separately. And I can also mark files as needs review. And this is something I want to talk about real quick because this is actually pretty handy. One of the ways that you can use this mark as needs review option is if say for example, you have a file that you know you need to go back to soon. If you mark a file as needs review, it's going to send it back to your needs review filter, allowing you to basically flag that file so that you can easily find it later on. It's also really useful for customers who have multiple users on their account who are collaborating and sharing files because they can mark files that they need to have reviewed by each other this way, and they can all quickly find them by just going to the needs review filter.